Carney stunned as EU turns its back. What just happened will leave you speechless. Since winning the Liberal leadership and becoming Canada's Prime Minister after the snap federal election on April 28, 2025, Mark Carney has faced a storm of economic and political challenges that are testing the limits of his government's resilience. His vision for Canada, centered around aggressive climate action and tight fiscal management, has come under intense scrutiny as the reality of the nation's financial and trade situation unfolds. Now, the European Union's recent decision to exempt the majority of its heavy industries from carbon border taxes has shaken Carney's strategy to its core, leaving many Canadians and political observers speechless. Carney has long argued that Canada must implement strict carbon pricing and other environmental regulations to maintain access to international markets, especially with the EU and Asia. His government's push for a sweeping carbon tax, industrial emissions caps, and an electric vehicle mandate by 2035 reflects this belief. But the EU's announcement that it will exclude 90% of its steel, cement, aluminum, and other heavy industries from its carbon border adjustment mechanism blows a huge hole in that argument. The move is designed to keep European industries competitive with China and the US, which do not impose comparable carbon taxes. This stark reality contrasts sharply with Carney's insistence that Canada needs these policies to remain a viable trading partner. This policy shift in Europe sends a powerful message. Even the world's climate policy leaders are willing to roll back stringent regulations when economic survival is at stake. For Canadians, this raises a critical question. Why is Carney pressing forward with mandates and taxes that threaten to undermine Canada's key industries, particularly in natural resources and manufacturing? The answer may lie in a complex mix of ideology, political signaling, and a disconnect from the on-the-ground economic realities faced by many Canadians. The electric vehicle, EV, mandate is one such area of concern. While transitioning to cleaner transportation is widely supported in principle, forcing all new vehicle sales to be electric by 2035 could have unintended consequences. Industry experts warn that if EV technology and pricing don't reach a level affordable for the average Canadian by 2030, the auto market could contract by as much as 20%, risking thousands of jobs in manufacturing, dealership networks, and parts suppliers. This isn't just speculation. Studies have shown that rapid, mandated transitions without market readiness can devastate industries, especially when consumers are hesitant or unable to afford new technologies. Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party and a vocal critic of Carney's policies, has seized on this issue. His campaign in Alberta's rural by-election, a traditional Conservative stronghold, highlights the growing frustration among voters who see these policies as out of touch with their everyday struggles. Media coverage has varied widely, with some outlets focusing on internal party politics and others emphasizing logistical aspects of the election. However, at its core, the by-election serves as a referendum on competing visions for Canada's economic future, one centered on aggressive environmental regulation versus one prioritizing economic growth and energy development. Fiscal management has also become a major sticking point for Carney's government. After securing a historic $149 billion spending bill in Parliament, the government swiftly requested an additional $8 billion just weeks later, quietly passed without much public debate. This move has fueled accusations of budget mismanagement and a lack of transparency, especially as many Canadians face rising inflation and a tightening cost of living. Opposition parties and independent watchdogs alike have expressed frustration over the government's refusal to release a comprehensive budget before Parliament's summer recess, interpreting this as an attempt to avoid scrutiny. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives recently issued a sobering forecast. Ottawa's planned budget cuts could reach a staggering 24% of federal operating expenditures, the largest in modern Canadian history. This far exceeds the 5 to 19% reductions seen under previous governments and raises serious concerns about the sustainability of public services and social programs. While deficit reduction is undeniably important, the scale and speed of these cuts risk destabilizing essential government functions unless handled with exceptional care. Complicating matters, Carney's government has committed to increasing defense spending to meet NATO's 2% GDP target, a pledge welcomed by international allies but financially burdensome at home. Balancing these defense obligations with the pressing domestic needs of Canadians, healthcare, housing, economic recovery, adds another layer of complexity to the federal budget puzzle. The looming deficits, now projected to average $78 billion annually over the next 4 years, put immense pressure on Ottawa to find sustainable revenue streams or risk deepening economic inequality. Canada's economic challenges extend beyond fiscal issues to structural barriers that have stifled growth for years. Many critics point to the government's regulatory framework, which some argue has strangled the energy sector and discouraged investment. Laws such as Bill C-69, which imposes rigorous environmental assessments on pipeline projects, and tanker traffic bans have delayed key infrastructure needed to diversify Canada's oil markets beyond its traditional buyers. This bottleneck limits export options, hurting producers and regional economies alike. Provincial leaders like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith have been outspoken in calling for reforms to revitalize the energy industry and reduce bureaucratic hurdles. These tensions between federal environmental goals and provincial economic priorities highlight the deep divisions shaping Canadian politics today. The debate raises important questions about how to balance environmental responsibility with the economic realities of resource-dependent communities. Recent security incidents have only added to the government's challenges. Coordinated bomb threats targeting multiple major Canadian airports, including Ottawa, Montreal, and Vancouver, caused temporary disruptions and widespread concern. Although authorities quickly deemed these threats false alarms and normal operations resumed, the episode underscored vulnerabilities in national security and the importance of vigilance in an increasingly complex global environment. Political dysfunction has also been a defining feature of Carney's tenure so far. The Prime Minister's refusal to provide a full fiscal update during the spring session despite calls from opposition parties has intensified frustrations across the political spectrum. Many view this as a troubling sign of either poor financial planning or deliberate avoidance of parliamentary oversight, raising questions about government accountability. In the face of these mounting challenges, Carney's government stands at a crossroads. The EU's recent policy about carbon tax exemptions starkly exposes the gap between lofty climate ambitions and harsh economic realities. It forces a reevaluation of Canada's path forward, one that must balance environmental goals with the need for economic competitiveness and social stability. The stakes could not be higher, as the decisions made now will ripple through the economy and political landscape for years to come. For Canadians watching these developments, the contrast between Carney's approach and that of opposition voices like Poilievre could not be clearer. While Carney emphasizes climate action and fiscal austerity, Poilievre champions economic growth, deregulation, and energy development as the keys to national prosperity. As the country prepares for pivotal elections ahead, voters will have to weigh these competing visions carefully. Ultimately, Canada's future hinges on finding a sustainable balance between protecting the environment, supporting industries and jobs, maintaining transparent governance, and ensuring fiscal responsibility. Whether Carney's government can navigate these treacherous waters remains uncertain, but one thing is certain: the world is watching, and what happens next will leave Canadians and global observers alike speechless.